What's going on, everyone? Today I have something new from Magmod, and not only am I going to show you these new products, yeah, that's right, multiple products, I'm also going to show you how I use them on an actual shoot and walk through exactly how I got these final images. Okay, so most people familiar with Magmod are familiar with the Magbox. Now, the difference between the Magbox and this is that this is the Magbox Pro. Now, what makes the Magbox Pro different from the original Magbox? So first, you'll notice that there's no longer these yellow little tabs on the edge here that have a little magnet, and you use that to attach your diffusion panel. So instead of having diffusion panels that you can attach, Magmod has gone to this system. So you'll notice a little flap here, and inside this flap is the diffusion panel, and then from here you simply zip it on, which is amazing. It's like significantly easier than attaching any other Magmod modifier or Magmod diffusion panel, and then also easier than any other softbox diffusion panel with Velcro or magnets or whatever. This zipper thing is the way to go now. So outside of that, the product, or the Magbox Pro, no longer uses the focus diffuser. So the focus diffuser still does fit, but instead they've opted to use the old school egg crate. But these egg crates now attach with magnets, as you would think. And you just kind of like lay it in here, and then all the magnets just make everything line up. And it's super convenient, super easy. And so that's basically the new Magbox Pro. Other than that, it's the exact same size. If we open it up, the only other difference you'll notice is that instead of having this like crunchy reflective material inside, it's now a more soft silver. I haven't done any testing yet. Maybe I'll add that in at the end to see if there's any sort of like output difference, but in my initial go through of everything, I haven't noticed any sort of difference. So that is the new Magbox Pro. Outside of the Magbox Pro, we also have a new Magbox Strip Box, which is basically the exact same as the new Magbox Pro, except it's obviously a strip box. It's a fairly big size. It's a 36-inch strip box, but it still uses the same zipper to attach the diffusion. It still has magnets around the outside to do the egg crate. It still has the zipper so that you can reach in and change out gels and all that fun stuff. But the product that I'm most excited about is actually quite a bit bigger, and it is the giant Magbox. So this is actually the new Pro 42. Okay, so to kind of give you guys a reference of what that looks like, here is the Magbox inside. Okay, so it's quite a bit bigger. It still uses the same, there's this flap, the diffusion panel comes out, and then from here you can just zip it on, which is super easy. Don't have to worry about lining stuff up, and then it's just on. You also don't have to worry about losing it or forgetting to have it, because it's just always attached. And then it also has the magnets to do the big egg crate, and the zipper and all of that fun stuff. One thing that's worth noting with the original Magbox, it's small enough to where you can just like reach in. I usually have like a hand on this side and a hand on this side, and then I just like scrunch it to latch it. With the new box, it's quite a bit bigger. So even I have fairly long arms. I'm 6'1". So even with fairly long arms, it's hard to get like a hand here and a hand inside to like press it. I'm able to do it, but even with long arms, it's kind of difficult. So what I like to do is you can either just like set it on the ground and set it on and then like lean over the box and just press it down. But what I like to do is just like turn my hands like this so that the palms are backwards, and then I can just reach in and pull it shut. So that's cool. That's what I found to be the easiest way. Another thing that I like is now that there's, and I don't know if this is like specific to the design and why they use more magnets, but because there's more magnets on the edge to attach the eggshell crates on top, whenever you fold it up, those magnets actually stick to each other, and it kind of keeps everything a little bit more attached. So it's like, so let me show you the regular. So this is the original Magbox, and whenever it's folded down, even if you let it go, it just kind of always plops open. Whereas the new one, because those magnets stick together, it just kind of stays a little bit more compact because everything's kind of scrunched in and held together. Okay, so aside from the new larger Magbox, the strip box, the Magbox Pro, and all the eggshell crates that go along with each of the 3 boxes, they've also released, or going to release by the time you see this video, a new mag shoe. Now the reason for the new mag shoe, and in comparison to the old one, they're essentially the same. Weight wise, they feel the same. Everything else feels essentially the same, but the difference is that the new one has this new colored top. So it's like a brass gold color instead of the silver color. And basically the only reason for the redesign is that this is designed for something a little bit more heavy duty. So attaching the big box or the strip box, because there's a lot more leverage being placed onto the shoe because of that, this is just designed to hold up more weight. So if you go with just the new Magbox Pro, you'll probably be fine with just the original mag shoe, but if you go with anything bigger, then you definitely want to get the new updated shoe. Okay, so now that we have an idea of what these new products are, I want to go in and I'll kind of show you me using them. So we're going to go to a photo shoot that I did. It was an engagement shoot. And I'm only going to be using the new larger softbox. I feel like that's probably going to be what most people are interested in as far as results, because you know, the Magbox Pro in comparison to the original Magbox, results are going to be fairly the same. Strip boxes are a little bit more unique, as in, you know, use them for like rim lighting, and you don't necessarily use them for like main lights and stuff like that. So I'm just going to be using the big new 42 softbox. But before I jump into that, I know everybody's always going to be asking about gear. So I'm using, for the shoot, I'm using my Sony A9. I'm using a combination of a 24 millimeter lens, 35 millimeter lens, and 85 millimeter lens. You should have a pretty good idea based on the resulting images of which lens I'm using. But those are the only 3 lenses I use or even own. So it's usually pretty easy to tell which lens I'm using whenever I post an image. Outside of that, for lighting, you can still use the all the different mag rings. So they got the mag ring where you can attach hot shoe flashes inside of it and it kind of clips in. They also have all the different adapters where you can use like Pro Photo, Ellen Chrome, Bowens, all of that. So what I'm using for this photo shoot is this guy. So this is the Flashpoint Evolve Explore 1200 Pro. And so basically what this light is, for those that aren't familiar, is it's a pack and head system. So the light just attaches to the top of the stand like normal. This is the main tube where all the light comes out of. And then all of the, like, you know, big bulky internal type stuff, batteries and stuff, is placed inside of this, which is the pack part of this system. And so this is 1200 watt seconds of power. So in comparison, most people are familiar with, like, you know, the Flashpoint Evolve 200 Pro or the Godox 200. This is basically 6 of those, all packed up into one small compact system, whereas all of the weight is down low instead of up on top of the light stand. And so that's what I'm using, in case anybody's curious. But without further delay, let's go ahead and jump into the shoot. I'm going to show you some behind the scenes footage, and then we'll jump in and I'll kind of walk through, you know, I'll show you some before and afters and things like that. Okay, so these are the results for the first set. You'll notice the light is nice and soft. The main thing that I'm not liking here is you can see this hotspot from the softbox. So the next thing I'm going to do is add the grid, but before I do that, I wanted to kind of just jump in here real quick and show you some before and afters of what this image looked like just right out of camera. So here it is before and after. There's not a lot that I'm doing here. I'm basically just applying my, my preset from Develop. It's the Two Man Studios pack. And then I just dialed my exposure down just a tad, and that's basically all I've done for this image. So with that, let's go ahead and jump in and walk through where I'm adding the grid. Okay, so now that I've added the grid, you'll notice that the hotspot that was on the wall before is now gone. So here it is with the hotspot, here it is without the hotspot. Now you'll notice that the background also changes a little bit, but that is actually because in post I have added a layer here in Capture One to just darken down that background just a tad. If I leave that layer off and go back up here, you'll notice that it's actually fairly similar. The only difference is there is kind of a little bit of a hot spot right here. That's simply because that light is bleeding onto the wall. But as far as it getting a little bit darker, that is because I'm darkening it down just to add a little bit of pop to them. But again, here is a before and an after, and then before and after, darkening that down. Also, here is a glimpse at just, the setup. So here is the light. I have the grid attached. It's basically the bottom of the light is almost even with their chins. And then distance wise, it's about the width of the light away from Ethan here. And so that's kind of like my go-to setup as far as lighting position. So height-wise, I usually have the bottom of the softbox even with about their chin. And then distance-wise, I usually try and have it about the width of whatever the light modifier is. And so for a 42-inch softbox, it's about 42 inches away from the subject. Okay, so now let's go ahead and jump into the next setup. Okay, so for this setup, you'll notice that this is basically just a headshot. What I think of when I think big modifiers is I think nice soft light portraits, things like headshots. And so I wanted to just give Ethan and Mishai each their own, headshot style portrait. At the very beginning, I took a couple test shots and then I walk up and I adjust the light. That is because I can see a catch light in this eye, but here it's kind of falling into shadows. And so that light is just a little bit too far back towards the background. So what it is I pulled it forward and just feathered it a little bit more so that that light would hit this eye as well. Okay, so not much has changed here as far as setup. I just placed her in the exact same area, and then, but in this one I did take a before. So this is before with no light modifier, and then this is after with the light turned on. So adding a significant amount of light, but it is nice, soft, beautiful light. Okay, so here are the results for that setup. Basically what I was looking for is kind of like a edge light or a rim light type of situation, but I still wanted there to be a little bit of wrap onto the front side of her face. And so you can see that light is coming in from almost behind her and then feathering out and kind of wrapping around her face and still kind of filling in the socket, lighting up her lips and such. The next thing I did was just kind of go back into this headshot style setup, but I had a little bit more different framing on the wall. Okay, so these are the results for that. Basically, it's very similar to what we did with the original headshot. I'm just shooting at a little bit of a different angle. But now because I'm shooting at a different angle, the light has no ability to fall onto the wall because the softbox is basically pointing directly away from the wall. So I went ahead and removed my grid, and that just gives me a little bit more power to wrap around the subject. So we have a little bit more cleaner wrap around her. And then to give you an idea, here is with the light, and here is without the light. And then here is a before, and then here is an after. And basically all this is my preset, and then I up my exposure just a little bit to kind of compensate. Okay, so for this setup, I have her facing the light, and then I'm kind of like side lighting him. The only difference here is that inside of the softbox now I have a full CTO gel, and then in post I've then compensated for that CTO to kind of draw, it kind of brings all of the background and ambient light to a more bluish tone. So here's a before to give you an idea. So they're obviously very orange. That's because of the CTO gel, and I just shot this in auto white balance. But in post, that's super easy to fix. And so I just dialed everything in for their skin tones, and then let everything else that was ambient fall to this like bluish tone, okay? Okay, now for this setup, the light remained pretty much in the same location, and I just kind of changed my angle, changed my lens, things like that. But here is the results. Here's a before, and here's an after, so not much editing is done here. But one thing that I noticed was the catch light here on his eye. You can actually see the reflector, or the softbox reflecting in his glasses. I went ahead and I asked him, I was like, hey, do you want any images with your glasses off? He said no. So what I did is I just kind of switched up my posing a little bit, made him look a little bit more towards her so that there wasn't that reflection shining on the glasses. And so that's how we end up with this image here. The next thing that I did, so in this image, you can see that I'm about +1 on the exposure in post. So again, here's a before, here's an after. The next thing I did is I just dialed up my power on the light, which gave me this, something a little bit more dramatic. And in this situation, I'm actually going down a stop in post. And so here's the results here. Okay, and basically what this did is the light is not hitting the background really at all. And so this is able to make it so the background becomes darker, even though I'm not really changing anything here. I'm not even changing my camera settings. I just upped the flash power, and in post I compensated for that adjustment. One thing that I like to do is make sure that my backgrounds and my ambient light are within a workable range. And so even though I'm shooting off-camera flash with a nice softbox, what I'll do is I'll take a frame without the flash firing. I know it's going to take a little bit of time for the flash to recycle, and so what I'll do is I'll just fire like 2 or 3 frames back to back, knowing that the light won't be able to keep up. And that way I don't have to worry about, like turning off triggers or adjusting my camera to not have the flash fire or anything like that. I'll just make sure that the camera can take an image without the flash firing. And that gives us something like this. And so here's a before and here's an after. And so it's the exact same thing as this image before, except the flash isn't going off. But I'm able to get this clean, natural light look, and because my exposure is set within a very workable range, I'm at a base ISO 100, or here it's actually set to 125. But just adding 2.5 stops about, I can get this nice natural light portrait at the same time that I'm using flash without having to do any sort of like crazy turning things off or readjusting lights or anything like that. Okay, again, this is the before and the after without the light firing. And then this is a similar situation. So here it is with the light going off. Basically all I did is I moved down a little bit so I could see their faces a little bit more. His face is still turned in a way that the reflector isn't reflecting off of his glasses. She's got this nice little smile, and I'm getting this nice depth on this wall. But again, I just fire off a couple quick frames and I get this natural light scene without the flash firing, and adjusting my exposure, I can get something like this. As you'll see, there's this edge light here, so the light is actually coming from this direction. And so what I did in post is I just created a gradient to kind of amplify or accentuate that light that's coming in from this direction. So here's this one. And then I added a second one to just kind of make this a little bit more believable, because, you know, it's not a smooth gradient of light always. There's kind of like this this fall off here. And so what I did is I have one gradient that's kind of adding this exposure and some color, and then I have another gradient that's adding just a little bit more color and also a little bit more light to kind of make this believable. This is like, you know, sun flare coming in from this direction. Okay, so that's all I have. I hope this was helpful. If you have any questions about the new Magmod products, just leave them in the comments and I'll be sure to try and get back to you. All right, talk to you later, guys.